He banished me from the pack, but every full moon his wolf comes looking for me. Lyra's paws pressed into the cold, wet earth as she ran through the forest. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves, reminded her that she was no longer safe, no longer welcome. The pack had turned their backs on her, and the bite of betrayal still burned deeper than any winter wind. Her chest heaved, breath fogging in the moonlight, as she tried to distance herself from the only home she had ever known. The alpha, Kale, had looked at her with a mixture of anger and disappointment before the sentence had been given. Banished. His golden eyes had burned into her memory, a reminder of the bond that had been broken. For months she had thought she belonged, that her place was among the pack, sharing the same blood and loyalty. But one mistake, one misstep, and everything had crumbled. Lyra had not understood it then, could not comprehend the weight of the rules that governed the pack. Now, alone in the shadows of the forest, she felt the full weight of her exile. She tried not to think of him, Kale, the one who had always been so distant yet so familiar, the one who had looked at her with more intensity than any other wolf in the pack. But the memory of his wolf form, tall and dark beneath the moonlight, haunted her even now. The forest stretched endlessly, a labyrinth of towering oaks and thick undergrowth. Lyra's ears twitched at every sound, the distant howl of another wolf, the whisper of the wind through the branches, the crack of a small branch beneath her paw. She had to be careful. Survival depended on alertness and instinct, skills she had honed during her time with the pack. Yet now there was no one to guide her, no one to watch her back. She was alone. And yet even in her solitude she felt him. It was subtle at first, a tingling along her spine, a shiver that had nothing to do with the cold night air. She paused, ears lifted, senses straining. The scent was faint, carried on the wind, sharp, familiar, undeniably his. Kale. Her heart thudded against her ribs, an unsteady rhythm that betrayed her fear, and something else, something she refused to name. Lyra turned in circles, trying to catch the scent again. Her paws moved silently over the leaf-littered ground, muscles taut and ready. But the scent faded, leaving only the bitter ache of absence. She wanted to run, to flee further from the memory of him, yet her legs seemed reluctant, almost as if they remembered the way they had moved beside him in the forest long ago. The full moon rose higher, spilling silver light across the forest floor. Shadows stretched and twisted, forming shapes that danced along the underbrush. Lyra's senses sharpened. Something was coming, something big, something that filled her with a strange mix of dread and anticipation. And then she saw him. A dark figure emerged from the mist, moving with a grace and power that was unmistakable. The golden eyes, glowing in the pale moonlight, locked onto hers, her breath caught. Kale. In his wolf form he was a vision of strength and wild beauty, every inch the alpha she had known and feared. Yet now there was hesitation in his stance, a restraint she had never seen before. "Kale," she whispered, though she knew he could not hear her. The word felt heavy on her tongue, carrying all the anger, fear, and longing she had kept buried since that night. Kale's wolf lowered its head slightly, ears flicking back. He did not advance, did not retreat. He simply watched her, eyes filled with something that mirrored her own conflicted emotions. He had been sent to find her, to ensure she remained banished. Yet here he was, drawn to her as if some invisible tether pulled him closer with every heartbeat. Lyra's instincts screamed at her to run, to escape, to hide. But curiosity and a strange, painful longing rooted her to the spot. She took a slow step forward, then another, careful to remain calm, to show no fear. Every step brought her closer to the memories she had tried so hard to forget. "You shouldn't be here," she murmured, though it was unclear whether she spoke to him or to herself. The moonlight caught the edge of his fur, revealing the strength and power that had once protected the pack and her. Kale's wolf moved closer, muscles rippling beneath the dark pelt. He stopped just short of her, the tension between them electric, as if the forest itself held its breath. Lyra could feel it too, a magnetic force pulling her toward him despite the betrayal, despite the exile. She had never felt anything so intense, so consuming. For a long moment neither spoke. The forest hummed with life, the wind whispering secrets through the trees. Lyra felt a pang of sorrow, knowing this encounter could not end with reconciliation. Not yet. The pack's rules, the curse of her banishment, still loomed over them. Yet the pull between them was undeniable, a force that neither logic nor anger could overcome. Kale lowered his head further, nose twitching as he caught her scent more clearly. He growled softly, a low, mournful sound that made her ears flatten against her skull. It was a sound filled with regret and longing, a mirror of her own conflicted heart. Lyra's mind raced. She had to leave, had to continue her exile, yet she could not tear her gaze away. Something ancient, something unspoken, passed between them. It was more than attraction, more than memory. It was a bond, invisible yet unbroken, forged by the wild and strengthened by the curse that bound them. The forest seemed to grow quieter, as if holding its breath. Then, without warning, Kale's wolf took a step closer, closing the distance between them. Lyra felt the earth beneath her paws, the pull of the full moon above, and the weight of every choice she had made. "You come for me," she whispered, her voice trembling. Not in fear, but in recognition. The words hung between them, fragile as mist, yet powerful. Kale's wolf growled again, low and resonant, a sound that carried not anger but longing. His eyes, golden and filled with untold stories, met hers. In that moment, Lyra understood the truth. He was drawn to her, bound by the same invisible chains that held her captive even in her freedom. She could run, she could hide, she could deny it all, but he would come. Every full moon he would come. The forest shifted around them, shadows dancing in the silver light. Lyra's heart ached with a mixture of fear and hope. She wanted to reach out, to touch him, to erase the years of exile and misunderstanding. But she could not yet. Not until they both faced the pain of their past, the consequences of the pack's laws, and the truths they had buried deep within their hearts. A gust of wind swept through the clearing, carrying with it the scent of the forest and the lingering magic of the night. Lyra felt a shiver run through her, not from cold, but from the realization that nothing would ever be the same. The bond between them, invisible yet unbroken, pulsed with life, demanding acknowledgement. Kale's wolf circled her slowly, each step deliberate, careful. He did not attack, did not threaten. He simply observed, as if trying to understand the creature before him, the wolf he had loved, the wolf he had banished, the wolf he could never forget. Lyra lowered her head slightly, her instincts wary but her heart strangely open. She had survived the forest, survived exile, and yet she felt the pull of something far older, far stronger than either of them. Something that defied rules, laws, and punishment. The night stretched on, each moment heavy with unspoken words and unfinished stories. Lyra knew she could not stay here forever. She could not risk the full wrath of the pack, could not ignore the danger that lingered in the shadows. Yet she could not leave, not while Kale's wolf remained so close, so impossibly near. The moon climbed higher, casting a silver glow over the clearing. Lyra's paws itched to move, to flee, to run from the emotions that churned inside her. But the moment of choice had arrived, and she could not deny it any longer. Kale's wolf took another step forward, closer than ever, his golden eyes locked onto hers. Lyra's breath hitched, her chest tight with longing and fear. She could feel the pull of the curse, the invisible tether that bound them across space and time, across exile and punishment. And then, as if the forest itself had decided, the mist curled around them, cloaking their forms in silver shadow. Lyra felt the weight of the moment settle over her, heavy and inevitable. The bond between them, undeniable and unbroken, demanded recognition. She did not speak. She did not move. She simply stood, feeling the presence of the wolf she had loved and lost, feeling the ache of the years they had spent apart, and knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying a single truth: exile had not ended their connection. The full moon had awakened it, and Kale would always come. Lyra's heart trembled as she watched the massive black wolf in the mist. The golden eyes glimmered with pain, longing, and something she dared not name. And for the first time since her banishment, she allowed herself to hope that perhaps, just perhaps, this bond, broken but not severed, might survive the trials ahead. The forest was silent, waiting. The night stretched on, thick with magic and tension, as Lyra realized the truth she could not escape. She was not free, and he would not stop. Every full moon, Kale's wolf would come. And the next time, she knew, the encounter would demand more than silence. The forest felt different under the blood-red glow of the full moon. Shadows stretched long across the ground, and mist curled around the roots of ancient trees. Lyra moved cautiously, her paws barely making a sound as she navigated the undergrowth. Though the forest had become familiar in her exile, tonight it seemed alive with a strange energy, a pull that she could not name. She sensed him before she saw him. The wind shifted, carrying a scent that made her heart stutter, a scent of power, wildness, and longing. Kale. His presence was nearer than ever, though he remained hidden in the silver shadows. Lyra's pulse quickened. She had tried to deny the pull between them, but the curse that bound them was stronger than any rule, stronger than any fear. Every full moon he came. She had thought she could avoid him, thought she could survive the exile in solitude, but the forest itself seemed to conspire against her. The trees whispered in the wind, and even the river's flow carried hints of his presence, reminding her that the alpha of her pack, her alpha, was never truly gone. Lyra stopped at the edge of a glade, ears pricked, senses stretched. The mist parted slowly, revealing the massive shape of Kale's wolf emerging from the shadows. His golden eyes glimmered with both intensity and pain. Every muscle in his body radiated strength, yet there was a tension there that mirrored her own. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly, though the words were more a reminder to herself than a warning to him. The wind carried her voice, yet Kale did not move immediately. He stood frozen, watching, as if measuring the distance between them and the consequences of crossing it. Lyra's heart ached with memories of days spent in the forest learning, running, and growing alongside him, of nights where she had felt the weight of his gaze even when he said nothing. She had been exiled, yes, but the memory of him was a chain she could not break. Kale took a step closer. The earth beneath his paws seemed to hum with the power of the pack, and with every step, Lyra felt the pull of the curse tighten. She tried to retreat, to put distance between them, but her legs would not obey fully. Something older, deeper, compelled her to remain. "You feel it too," she whispered, more to herself than to him. Her voice trembled slightly, betraying her fear and longing. Kale's wolf lowered his head, a slow, deliberate movement that mirrored respect and caution. His eyes never left hers. The tension between them was a living thing, thick in the air, heavy with unspoken words. In that moment, Lyra realized the truth she had been avoiding. The curse was not just a tether. It was a mirror of their own hearts. The past weighed on them both. Lyra had been exiled for breaking the sacred rules, yes, but Kale had carried the weight of that decision as heavily as she had carried the pain of being cast out. Every howl in the night, every full moon, reminded him that she was out there, surviving alone, and yet bound to him in ways neither could deny. Lyra's pause shifted nervously. "Why do you come every month?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Am I just a shadow you chase?" Kale's wolf growled softly, a low, mournful sound that filled the clearing. It was a sound that spoke of longing, of regret, of something deeper than words could express. Lyra's ears flattened, her body trembling with a mix of fear and yearning. "I don't know if I should stay or run," she whispered, more to herself than to him. She remembered the nights when she had run through this same forest with him at her side, when the weight of the pack's expectations had felt lighter with his presence. But now she was alone, and yet not alone. The bond of the curse tied them together, even as the laws of the pack sought to keep them apart. Kale's wolf circled her slowly, each step deliberate, each movement carrying the weight of intention. He did not attack, nor did he threaten. He simply moved with a grace that belied the tension in the air, closing the distance between them inch by inch. Lyra could feel his power, his presence, his need, and yet he was restrained. The curse demanded it, yes, but something deeper, an understanding, an unspoken rule held him back. Kale could not breach the boundaries she had set, even as every instinct in him screamed to close the distance, to bridge the space between them. Lyra's mind wandered to the tales the elders had told of the pack's history, stories of wolves bound by magic, of spirits and curses that tested love, loyalty, and strength. She had laughed at them once, thinking them exaggerations, myths to scare the young. Now she understood. The bond between her and Kale was no mere coincidence. It was something older, something primal, and it demanded confrontation. The wind shifted again, carrying whispers of the forest. Lyra sensed a presence, something not quite human, not quite wolf. A spirit perhaps watching, waiting. She stiffened, ears swiveling. The stories of old spoke of guides, of watchers in the forest who observed the cursed and the exiled, offering warnings or perhaps tests. Kale stopped circling, lowering himself slightly in the stance of cautious observation. His eyes held hers, unblinking, unwavering. Lyra felt her chest tighten. There was so much left unsaid between them, words of anger, of longing, of guilt, and of fear. "I never wanted this," she said softly. "I never wanted to be banished." Kale's wolf tilted his head as if he understood more than the words themselves. The forest seemed to grow still, every creature holding its breath. The mist swirled, forming shapes that danced along the edges of their vision. Shadows of the past, of the pack, of mistakes and regrets pressed close. Lyra took a deep breath. She could not run forever. She could not hide from the bond that tied her to Kale, no matter how much anger or fear she carried. The curse was a mirror of their hearts, reflecting everything they refused to face, and the full moon demanded reckoning. Kale stepped closer, the distance between them shrinking with each deliberate movement. Lyra felt the pull in her chest, a magnetic force that defied logic and fear. She wanted to speak, to demand answers, but the words caught in her throat. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, yet every heartbeat drew her nearer to him. The air shimmered, thick with tension and unspoken emotion. Lyra realized then that the curse had never been about punishment. It was about connection, about understanding, about facing the truths they had buried deep within their hearts. And in that moment she understood. To survive, to break free, they would have to confront the bond, not fight it. The wind whispered through the trees, and with it came the faintest hint of a voice, a guide perhaps, or a warning from the forest itself. Lyra shivered, not from cold, but from the realization that the night was far from over. There were tests yet to face, choices yet to make, and emotions yet to untangle. Kale's wolf lowered his head further, slow, deliberate, almost reverent. Lyra's ears twitched. She could feel his heartbeat through the bond, a steady drum of tension, longing, and something softer, something unspoken. "You can't deny it," she whispered, barely audible. "The bond, the curse, it's real, and it's here." Kale responded with a growl, low and resonant, carrying all the emotions he could not speak aloud. Regret, longing, pain, desire, all mixed into a single sound that made Lyra's heart ache and race at the same time. She felt the pull, the invisible tether that stretched between them across the forest, across the exile, across the full moon. It demanded acknowledgement. It demanded action. And it demanded them to face what they had both been running from each other. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled slightly. a low vibration that resonated through the forest. Lyra's fur bristled. The mist thickened, swirling around their legs like a living entity. Something ancient and powerful had awakened, drawn by the bond, by the curse, by the intensity of their emotions. Lyra stepped back instinctively, yet her gaze never left Kale. His wolf mirrored her movements, cautious but unyielding. The forest itself seemed to watch, waiting for them to make the next move. The moment stretched, heavy with tension and unspoken words. Lyra realized that their story was far from over. The bond, the curse, the full moon, it had brought them here, and it would not release them until they faced it fully. Kale's golden eyes locked onto hers one last time as the mist swirled between them. The pull of the full moon, of the curse, of the bond they shared, tightened like a noose. Lyra's heart raced, and she understood that the next step they took would change everything. And then, as if the forest itself had decided, a shape emerged from the shadows behind her, a spectral figure glowing faintly, representing the curse, the pack, and all the unspoken truths they had avoided. Lyra froze, realizing that their confrontation had only just begun. The forest held its breath. The moon hung heavy and red in the sky. Kale's wolf growled softly, a sound filled with warning and longing, as the spectral figure drifted closer. The bond pulsed, strong and undeniable, and Lyra knew in her heart. This night would demand more than silence, more than hesitation. They were tied together by fate, by curse, and by something older than either of them, and the next choice would define everything. Lyra's ears twitched, her heart hammering, as she prepared herself for what was coming, an encounter that would test her, him, and the bond that neither exile nor anger could ever sever. The blood-red moon cast a silver glow over the forest, and the night whispered of reckoning, of trials, and of the love that neither of them could deny. The full moon hung high in the sky, casting silver light across the forest. Shadows stretched long and twisted between the ancient trees, and the mist swirled around the roots like ghostly fingers. Lyra stood in the center of a small clearing, her heart pounding with anticipation. Every sense was alert, every muscle tense. Tonight, the bond between her and Kale would face its ultimate test. Kale's wolf emerged from the shadows, silent and powerful. His golden eyes glimmered with an intensity that made Lyra's chest ache. He circled the clearing slowly, muscles rippling under his dark fur, yet his movements carried restraint. He could not approach recklessly, not when the bond tied them together and yet demanded caution. Lyra lowered her head slightly, feeling the pull of the invisible tether. She could sense his heartbeat, steady and strong, resonating through the bond that connected them. She had tried to ignore it, to deny it, to run from it, but the curse and the full moon had revealed the truth she could no longer escape. "I can feel you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I can feel every step, every breath, every thought." Kale's wolf paused, his golden eyes locking onto hers. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Even the wind stilled, as if waiting for the next move in a story older than the trees themselves. Lyra's heart throbbed with a mixture of fear and longing. She wanted to run, yet every instinct urged her to stay. The spectral figure that had appeared during the last full moon hovered nearby, its form shimmering faintly in the silver light. It represented the curse, the pack's judgment, and all the unspoken truths that had bound them. Lyra knew the figure would not leave until both she and Kale faced the bond fully. Kale's wolf lowered his head, slow and deliberate, showing respect and acknowledgement. His presence was overwhelming, yet he held himself in check. Lyra could sense the struggle within him, the desire to bridge the gap, to erase the exile, and yet the knowledge that they both had much to reconcile before freedom could be possible. The air was thick with tension, the kind that pressed against the skin and made the chest ache with unspoken emotion. Lyra stepped forward, carefully, deliberately. "We can't keep running," she said softly. "Not from the pack, not from each other, not from this bond." Kale's wolf growled low, a sound filled with longing and warning echoing through the clearing. Lyra's ears twitched, her body trembling with anticipation. The bond pulled them together, stronger than fear, stronger than anger. It demanded honesty, trust, and courage. Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, drawing on her own strength. She had survived exile, endured the wilderness, and faced the unknown. She could face this, face him, face the curse, face the truths that had been buried too long. When she opened her eyes, Kale had moved closer. The space between them was small, yet it felt enormous. Every step he took carried meaning. Every movement spoke of restraint and understanding. He was testing her as much as he was revealing himself. "You feel it too," she whispered. "The bond, the curse, the connection between us. You can't deny it any longer." Kale's wolf lowered his head further, pressing the tip of his muzzle toward the ground, a gesture of acknowledgement. The mist curled around them, swirling as if the forest itself were alive, guiding them toward the moment they had been drawn to since her exile. Lyra stepped forward again, closing the remaining distance. Her heart thudded in her chest, loud and insistent. The pull of the full moon, the invisible tether, and the weight of their shared history pressed upon her. She could no longer avoid it. She could no longer deny it. The spectral figure floated closer, observing, waiting. Its presence was not threatening. It was a reminder, a witness, a test of their courage and honesty. Lyra could feel the magic in the clearing, ancient and powerful, ready to react to the choices they would make. Kale's golden eyes softened slightly, and for the first time, Lyra saw a flicker of vulnerability beneath the power and restraint. He was more than the alpha, more than the wolf she had feared and loved. He was a being bound by duty, love, and the same curse that tied them together. Lyra inhaled deeply, letting the cool night air fill her lungs. "I'm not running anymore," she said. "Not from the pack, not from you, not from this." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Kale's wolf growled softly, a sound that resonated with approval, relief, and something unspoken, perhaps gratitude, perhaps hope. The bond pulsed between them, tangible and alive, like a thread of silver light connecting their hearts and souls. Slowly, Kale shifted, moving into a stance that mirrored hers. They were no longer predator and prey, banisher and exiled. They were equals, bound together by something older and stronger than either could control. The spectral figure observed silently, as if confirming that the moment of reckoning had arrived. Lyra stepped closer still, until she could feel the warmth emanating from Kale's wolf. The forest around them seemed to lean in, the wind carrying whispers of encouragement, the rustling leaves echoing with ancient songs of courage and trust. "You're not alone," she whispered, almost to herself. "And neither am I." Kale's wolf responded with a low growl, softening into a sound that was almost a sigh. The bond pulsed, stronger than ever, reacting to their mutual acceptance. The curse, once a source of fear and tension, began to shift, revealing its true purpose: connection, understanding, and the power to transform both of them. The mist thickened, swirling around their legs, and Lyra felt the bond wrap around her heart, not as a chain but as a lifeline. The fear, the anger, the longing, all of it came together in a single, undeniable truth. They were meant to face this together. Kale's wolf circled her slowly, and this time there was no hesitation. The tension that had defined every encounter since her exile dissolved slightly, replaced by trust, acceptance, and the unspoken promise of redemption. The spectral figure floated higher, its glow intensifying. Lyra could feel the magic in the clearing respond to their choice, to their courage, to their willingness to confront the bond fully. She knew then that the curse had never been about punishment. It had been a test, a challenge to see if love, trust, and understanding could overcome exile, anger, and fear. Kale's wolf lowered himself beside her, their sides almost touching. Lyra could feel his heartbeat through the bond, steady and strong, echoing her own. The forest seemed to sigh in relief, as if recognizing that the first step toward healing had been taken. "You survived," Kale's voice echoed softly in her mind, carried by the bond. "And you've grown stronger than I ever imagined." Lyra's chest tightened. The words were simple, yet heavy with emotion. She had survived the forest, the exile, and the curse, but more than that, she had survived herself, her fear, her anger, her longing. And now she stood here, face to face with the one who had banished her, and yet had never truly left her heart. "I've survived," she replied silently, "and I'm not afraid anymore." Kale's wolf shifted closer, the golden eyes softening. The bond pulsed, a tangible force of connection and understanding. The forest around them seemed to hum with approval, the mist swirling in celebration of the choice they had made, to face the curse together, to acknowledge the bond, and to embrace the possibility of redemption. The full moon reached its zenith, bathing the clearing in silver light. Lyra and Kale, wolf and human intertwined through the bond, felt the curse begin to dissolve, its power transforming from a source of fear to a source of strength. They were no longer exiled and punisher. They were partners, bound by choice, courage, and understanding. Slowly, Kale shifted back into his human form, tall and powerful, yet softened by the vulnerability he had shown only in the bond's presence. Lyra stepped closer, their eyes meeting, and for the first time since her exile there was no fear, no anger, only recognition and the possibility of a future together. "You're free," Kale whispered, his voice low and steady, carrying the weight of his emotions. "And so are we." Lyra felt a tear slip down her cheek, though she did not move to wipe it away. Freedom was not just the absence of exile, it was the acceptance of what they were, what they had endured, and what they could become together. The forest seemed to hold its breath one last time, then exhaled, the wind carrying away the remnants of fear, the whispers of the curse, and the shadows of the past. The bond that had once been a chain was now a bridge, connecting them not only to each other, but to the strength they had discovered within themselves. Kale reached out, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. Lyra felt the warmth of his touch, the steady reassurance that neither exile nor curse could erase. She met his gaze, seeing not just the alpha or the wolf, but the man who had shared her past, endured the bond, and chosen to face it with her. "Together," she whispered, the word carrying all the weight of the nights spent apart, the exiles, the longing, and the redemption yet to come. Kale nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "Together," he agreed. The full moon began to sink, casting long shadows that slowly faded into the first light of dawn. Lyra and Kale stood side by side, wolf and human, hearts bound by choice and courage, facing a new beginning. The forest, once a place of fear and exile, now felt alive with promise, with magic, and with the enduring strength of their connection. And as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the trees, Lyra knew one undeniable truth: exile had not ended them. The curse had not broken them. They had faced it, embraced it, and emerged stronger together. The forest whispered around them, carrying the tale of two wolves bound by moonlight, by courage, and by a bond that neither time nor fear could sever. The full moon would rise again, but they would face it not as banished and punisher, but as partners, equals, and survivors. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt truly free.